Hey everyone, so I have fun doing these videos, and I responded to my friend Buddy's comment about specifically what this video is going to be about. So I figured I'd just do a little bit of a breakdown here, just for fun. You know, I might remove it later or whatnot. I don't know. I did remove the musicology videos because I do want to redo some of those. Feel like they, especially towards the end of that series, I got better with how I did the videos, and I just want to actually do better videos. So in this one, we're going to be talking about what Zionism is, like the classical Zionism, like stuff you'd hear about from the medieval ages and stuff. Neo-Zionism, which is today, the Moshiach, and then the Third Temple and what all that means, right? So, um, yeah, let's get down into it. All right, so just to kick it off, let's talk about the start of the modern diaspora. So it did start in the Roman age, really with the burning of the second temple. Tish B'av, if you're Jewish, is a holiday. So both times the temple was destroyed, it was on the same Hebrew date. But in any case, it was destroyed by Vespus, uh, who took over after. Or actually, sorry, Titus destroyed it, and then Vespus took over directly after. Now, after Vespus was Domitian, which is the guy with the leaf laurel laureate around their head, the skinnier one with the full bust and the cloak and all that. He relaxed a lot of the laws that persecuted the Jews and Christians under the Roman Empire. They were still heavily taxed. They still couldn't return to Israel or to Judea and stuff like that, but they had at least finally the right to begin to have some semblance of their culture and their religion returned to them under him. The big one, though, was the guy that lived like 8 months, Vitellius, who was the heavier set one. I think he lived 8 months. It may have been 9 months. But he actually started to allow the Jewish people back to Israel. But and the reason why I wanted to bring up these two, or wanted to bring up this especially, was that when they got there, the second temple was already destroyed, and in its place was a Roman temple. And so that actually plays a huge part when we're talking about the return of the Jewish people from the diaspora and the religion as a whole, because the marking of the end of the diaspora is supposed to be the third temple. And you'd ask yourself, well, why didn't they rebuild it when they had the chance for the 9 months that Vitellius was alive? Well, let me tell you. All right, so let's talk about the Temple Mount then. So, after the Jews got the chance to return to Judea, to Jerusalem, I'm pretty sure it was under Vitellius that they were actually allowed to reascend the Temple Mount. However, when they got there, they found out that the Romans had built a Roman temple on the Temple Mount, and they had hung two statues. I was trying to find a like an artist's relief of this, but I couldn't. I know I've seen it before, and I think that they were cows or golden bulls, but they may have been golden eagles. Because I know when Herod destroyed the second temple, it was because they had tried to mount a golden eagle on the second temple, which caused the revolt. So in any case, I know that there were these two statues, and they were meant to like mock the Jewish religion. Anyway, the Jewish rabbinate, I guess for lack of a better term, at the time gets there, and they find out that this has been happening, and they make the determination then that they can't go up on top of the Temple Mount. Because, well, A, there's no Moshiach, but also now there's this foreign temple up there, so you can't really pray up there anymore. And to destroy it would be a desecration. It's holy ground up there. It's consecrated, so you shouldn't cause war. You shouldn't be destructive up there or anything like that. So they couldn't really do anything about it. They had to wait for an act of God to now remove this structure. And this goes on. So like the Bar Kokhba revolt takes place after this, and even when he takes over Jerusalem, he doesn't destroy anything on the Temple Mount or anything like that, because again, it's a desecration. So again, this goes on throughout history, and we see a number of false messiahs or false Mashiachs come about during this period of time when the Jewish people are in the diaspora and stuff. And some of them, want to go up there to destroy what's up there, and they find out they get called out as false messiahs, and then they convert and stuff. Others try to reestablish the Jewish homeland by blood, claiming to be Jewish is to you have to have the genetic relationship and stuff. That was like following the Inquisition and stuff, and then they would get there and they'd convert that specific false messiah converted to Christianity. And then you have other ones like Shabbatai V, who and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of these false messiahs that are coming out. And then in like the late 6800s or the late 5600s by the Hebrew calendar, or the early 1900s, late 1800s by the Christian calendar, the Jewish people ourselves, as a community, decide, hey, let's go re-inherit the land, and we'll get back into that here in just a second. I just want to focus on the Temple Mount here. But that's when my family split, and some of us go to the Jewish homeland in Palestine. We bought land from the Ottomans. It was taken from us, and then we fought in World War One, and ended up immigrating there during the first and second Aliyahs and stuff, or re-immigrating, I should say. And so that is kind of where this all picks up, because you can see here on the far left hand side, I specifically chose this one. It's like the guide for visiting Al-Aqsa Mosque from 1925, which is the period of time that the Jewish homeland existed, the Jewish homeland in Palestine, which was sovereign to the Jewish people with the respect to the rights of the local Palestinians. And the British were actually supposed to leave in 1920. They had letter of the law to leave, and they were supposed to answer for the crime of maintaining an illegal occupation. They wrote a paper on it called the White Paper of 1939, I think it may have been 36. But the League of Nations deformed, so they actually never got prosecuted on it. Like, the trial started and then stopped because the UN formed. And then when the UN formed, they never nullified that agreement from the Treaty of Severus that ended World War One. They ignored all the rights of the local Palestinians and all the rights of the Jewish people who were guaranteed sovereignty over this, and instead instituted UN Resolution 181 with everybody's backs to the wall. They had no option on either side. Like, David Ben Gurion didn't want to sign it, and the Palestinians never agreed to it. They did, but the Palestinians did agree to the Jewish homeland in Palestine under the Treaty of Severus. That was actually the one that they signed, right? So, very confusing situation. But the point is when they founded the Jewish homeland back then, the Jewish people determined that Al-Aqsa Mosque would be under the control of the Waqf. This wasn't a British instituted thing. This was like my own ancestors determined this because it was already built. And you can't destroy it because that would be a desecration. And you can't go up there to pray up there now because there's a foreign temple to another religion, right? So what do you do about this? Well, we're supposed to respect the religious nature of our Muslim neighbors that also live here, so give it to the Waqf. So that's when that determination gets made, right? And then since then, there's always like news stories about people wanting to destroy the Waqf and stuff. That we should have the right to go up there and build and yada yada yada. That's a whole thing. But again, it's not something that's going to happen by Jewish custom, because if you go up there and you destroy what's up there, you're just as guilty as the Romans that destroyed the Second Temple. You're making war on the most sacred, holy ground in all of Judaism, right? So, for that reason, whenever there is somebody that goes up there, it tends to piss people off in the country. So recently, this last year, when the Israelis got kidnapped and all that, that was a response to some people going up to the Temple Mount saying that they were Jewish, right? To do that is to claim that you are the Messiah. So everyone got pissed, not just the Muslims that didn't want them up there, but a lot of Jewish families got pissed too. And then, as retribution for that, these Israelis ended up getting kidnapped and murdered and stuff, which isn't right. And I don't think that's what the Jewish people in Israel wanted, but they didn't want people up there. That's why they have, you know, Bet shit, the Israeli police and stuff, they guard it to make sure that, only Muslims and Christians are allowed up there because you're not supposed to be up there. Instead, what we have to do is pray to what you'll see in the far right hand corner is the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall. And I've been there. I've prayed there. I've left, a prayer scroll in the husk of the Second Temple. That's how I know the Moshiach isn't here. The Messiah isn't here. I've seen literally the dead body of my religion, essentially. And what's interesting about this wall, actually, is none of those stones are actually from the Second Temple. So when Herod destroyed, before he destroyed the Second Temple, when he invaded Judea, he murdered like all the rabbis and then caused so much damage to the temple that when he became governor, he determined that he would fix it up. It was kind of an apology, I guess. And but they couldn't just rebuild it. That would destroy the temple. And again, we're talking about sacred ground where you're not supposed to destroy anything. So what they did instead was they replaced each of the stones one by one. So it'd just be remodeling, right? You're just fixing it. You're not destroying it. And that in itself is an engineering marvel because those blocks of stones are very big. But so anyway, that's what they did there, and that's why Jews pray at the Western Wall because it's the closest thing to the Second Temple that ever existed, that exists to this day. And you can't go up on the Temple Mount unless you're trying to say that you are the Messiah or the Mashiach. And then if you go up there, then you're probably going to spur an intifada because you're not the Mashiach, flat out. You can't destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque up there because it's sacred ground, so you can't do anything about that. Literally, we have to wait for the hand of God to do something, which is kind of what the Mashiach is supposed to be, right? So that's the conundrum there. Alright, so this is why I made this video, was to answer like this question here. Somebody was asking about if like Zionists are racist and stuff, and just like everybody else, yeah, there are some racist Zionists, but there's also non-racist Zionists. And then we were discussing, like, I wanted to discuss the difference between modern Zionism or neo-Zionism and actual classical Zionism, right? So, to begin with, Jews are Zionists, right? Like, the classical form of Zionism is that one day there will be a Mashiach or a Messiah, if you're going to speak Latin or English. I think it's Latin rooted word. Mashiach is Hebrew, but what it means is a Moses-like character, somebody that's going to come and liberate the Jews from the diaspora and return them to their ancestral homeland, right? And there's some complications behind that because people do often claim to be the Messiah, right? And we saw it last year with somebody climbing up to the Temple Mount. It doesn't matter if you say that you are or aren't. You climbed the Temple Mount. You made the claim that you were, right? So, and they weren't. They caused a war. In any case, classical Zionism is the religious belief that this will happen one day, and it's supposed to be peaceful, right? Neo-Zionism, however, this was a term that was coined actually quite recently, within the last like 50 years. But it came about with this guy, Theodor Herzl, who believed that the Jewish people should have the right to self-determine and a right to return to what would become the state of Israel. And under his belief, it was more of like, we don't have to wait for the Mashiach to come to do this. It was, we'll build it and then the Mashiach will come. So it's like, rather than waiting for it to happen, you're playing the Field of Dreams approach and saying if you build it, then they will come, right? And that's what the state of Israel, that's what the current Zionists are, because they believe by building the state of Israel that they will usher in the age of the Mashiach. And back when this all went down and first started in the late 1800s or the late 5600s by the Hebrew calendar, that was a huge thing, and it still is a huge thing. You can see in the very top photo, confront Zionism, boycott Israel. That's actually like they claim to be a Jewish group, but they don't agree with the existence of the state of Israel. But then if you look to the bottom, we have all these people, waving the Israeli flags and stuff, and to them, that group of Jews, they do see the state of Israel as being legitimate because they believe in neo-Zionism and the belief that if you build a positive country, that if you build a country that is representing the mitzvot, that you will usher in the age of the Mashiach. Now, whether or not Israel is adhering to the mitzvot is a whole other question. Whether or not it's even a Jewish country is a whole other question, right? Because they have done very many un-Jewish things as a nation. Now, as an individual, that part I can understand. Like, that's on you personally. But my personal issue with it is that they have done, on a national level, by passing national policy, done some very anti-Jewish things, right? Stuff that you would find in the Torah called out as a direct sin um, that carries with it, like, the death penalty in the Torah and stuff. So that's my personal take on it. I still do believe that everybody has a right to move and repatriate or patriate or immigrate to anywhere. Doesn't matter. So for that reason, I can't knock the neo-Zionists for wanting to establish the state of Israel. Heck, I tried to move over there. I was really just trying to move over there because I wanted to move. More so than for religious reasons, because I do believe that the Moshiach hasn't come, and so I don't really see it as like necessarily legitimate. I mean, it is legitimate. There should be a Jewish homeland there, but there's no Mashiach, right? So it's not a Jewish country. Nonetheless, I do think that everybody has the right to leave and go back to their country of origin, to become a member of a new country. I think I do actually kind of agree with some of the pan-Arabism, but I think that Jews should be included in that freedom of movement. So if you're unfamiliar with what pan-Arabism is, it's what they had under the Caliphate. You could move from one Arabic country to the other without really much fuss. I think that should be a thing. For the world, though, like, because that's what the EU has. You can go from one European country to another without much fuss. The thing is what pan-Arabism is getting pitched as is that the Jewish people wouldn't have that right, nor would, like, Christians or anybody else. It would just be the Muslim people and stuff. And that's not right. But I do believe in the freedom. Again, I can't stress this enough. I believe in the freedom of movement between sectors, between states, between countries. I'm a nomad. It's just how it's built. I love to move, right? So anyway, that's kind of the breakdown there. I hope I described it pretty well, but just to give like the briefest recap, the diaspora has been going on forever. People have let the Jewish people back at times throughout history, but because there was another religious temple atop the Temple Mount, we were never able to ascend the Temple Mount to rebuild or to build the third temple, right? We're waiting for a Moshiach or a Messiah to come. That Messiah shouldn't have a quota on how many Jews that they need to save, or how many Jews they're willing to save, and that Messiah shouldn't bring about the end of days. When the Jewish people, the Israelis that are there now, when they founded the state as the Jewish homeland, which was what my ancestors did, they determined that because there was a mosque up there, they needed to have somebody else run and operate the mosque because it's not our religion, and we can't do anything about this other religious temple being up there, again, because it would desecrate the most holy site for Jews. This is why people get angry when people go up to the Temple Mount claiming to be Jewish, because then you're claiming to be the Messiah. Even if you're not going to say that I'm the Messiah, you still walked up there as a Jewish person, which is what that is. There is a difference between Zionism within the religious context and modern Zionism, which is a political ideology, in that one is to wait until the Moshiach comes, and the other is we will try to build a good country that would usher in the Moshiach. Corruption aside. So that's kind of the breakdown there. And again, I can't stretch this enough. There's all sorts of issues and corruption on all sides of this, right? So no matter what your take is, no matter where you're standing at, you're probably going to be called out by somebody. You're probably going to get hated on by somebody, but you're also probably going to be liked by somebody. So just the most important thing I can stress in this video, I guess, is to remember that behind all these political ideologies, or under them, I should say, are regular innocent people that really just don't care. Like me, They just wanted to move, or they just want to live, right? When you're talking about these big political ideologies, the cashier, at well, it wouldn't be a 7-Eleven in Israel, but the cashier at some little corner mart, most of them don't care. The cheroot driver, they really don't care. They just want to be able to drive their cheroot, this van, from one part of the country to the other without having to go to through a checkpoint or something like that. That is the majority of people that live in these countries. It's a very small, extreme group of people that decide to take these things further, and then they cause wars by doing it. So that is kind of like what the issue is. And when they cause the war, that's how we know there isn't a Moshiach, right? So, anyway. Hope this explains stuff. I may take this down. I'm not sure. Like, I'll leave it up for a bit, but I just kind of feel weird about this kind of stuff until I can get my paper published and stuff. So, have a good one. Enjoy your week.